What's going on, guys? Today is July 11th. Pretty crazy day in the markets today. I wanted to hop on quickly here to do a trade recap. A couple of things to go over. I also want to talk about the market in general. The first trade I want to talk about here was in TNA, right? So TNA is a 3 times leveraged small cap ETF, so the RTY, IWM, right? So if we look, we've been pretty coiled for quite some time here in the Russell, or TNA in this case, right? And so I personally have been in the camp of seeing a rotation into the small caps, right? And some rotation out of NQ for some time. And I've been saying that if we want to see more upside, not just in the next coming days or weeks, but if we want to see a sustained bull run continue, right, to the S&P 600, 650, whatever these people talk about, right, we need to see some rotation to the small caps and also the Dow as well, right? But in particular, the small caps because they've been very weak. So why I took this trade, one, because I knew we had the CPI catalyst, thinking that CPI can give us a catalyst for the small caps, maybe even more so than the actual, NASDAQ, which ended up being the case, right? So my target for this trade was about 38.75, roughly these highs in here. And I truthfully didn't expect this big of a gap. I also didn't expect us to run this much, right? This was a pretty crazy run. As of recording this, right now the market's about to close, and TNA closed up about 11% here, right? Gapping up from roughly 36.8 up towards 40.8. It's a really big gap here, right? And so if we look at the higher time frames, right, and this type of setup, right, is something that I really like to look for on the higher time frames, right? So the weekly flipped back into an uptrend here, obviously because of this move. But at the time when we entered the trade, this was an inside bar, and we were sitting within that previous range. So we were sitting within a double inside weekly bar, and my thesis was that we were going to break that, right? We closed the day around here, which is right near the upper, third of this previous weekly bar. So I figured any type of gap up, maybe a gap up to 37.6s, and then we can run to 38.7s the rest of the week. Obviously, we got that whole entire move and some, right? And looking at the monthly, this is the main thing for me. We had a double monthly inside bar, right? So we had a double monthly inside bar. We now have broken that. So now for us with TNA, if we could break this 41.3s, next target is 43.2s up towards here. And then above that, we have significantly higher targets, probably way up towards here, about a 2x, right? We've really just been in one big range with a little spike up, a little spike down, right? So we had this little spike up here. And there's a little spike down here, but it's really been in one big range for like 2+ years. So once these monthly EMAs flip back to the upside here, once that happens, I think we can go on a pretty big run where TNA gets to at least 67, if not up here towards 80s, right? So that's one trade that we crushed today. We got 150% on those spreads. Probably could have held them till expiration, but personally, I wanted to wait for a pullback, thinking we would get a pullback considering how weak the NQ was. We did not. Next trade I want to talk about here is Amazon, right? So Amazon, we've been in this trade for quite a while now. Ended up closing the trade today for a loss with the big NASDAQ dump. But for me, I'm kind of torn about it, right? Because this is still a setup that I take 99% of the time. But knowing that Bezos was selling his shares, I may have, now looking back, handled it differently, right? I haven't really been in a trade in a situation where someone like that was kind of pinning the stock down, and I was just telling myself, just play the chart. Obviously today with the NASDAQ move plus this pin down towards the 200, we completely collapsed today, right? Could this trade still work? Sure, but I'm going to reevaluate, maybe get a different strike, different date, right? So as we can see here, we just never could get going through that 200. Despite this huge multi-month, multi-year breakout, we just couldn't get going. This trade still can work, and it probably will work at some point over 200s. Problem is, Bezos, in my opinion, has to stop selling now, right? Because it's clear that we couldn't get any momentum going above this 200 because of him, right? You can say the charts, you can say whatever, but I've been trading a while now, and hypothetically, this should have worked, especially after this daily 8 EMA test. But that's what happens. Even the best A+ setups, they will fail, right? Lastly, I wanted to cover TTD. So TTD, obviously the market today was very weak. Relatively speaking, this wasn't too weak. It only closed down about 1% or so. Not too bad. We'll look for a re-entry if maybe we get a gap up or something like that. But daily inside bar now, it's really going to be crucial where this ends the week. Ideally over this 100.5 level, maybe even closer to 101s, right? We'll see what happens tomorrow. But if we do not close over there, it could be seen as a false breakout and then potentially could retrace down. So we'll see how tomorrow ends, and then we can kind of reevaluate from there, right? And that's it for the options, right? So overall, pretty good week on the options. The last trade I wanted to cover here was an NQ, right? I took longs on NQ at 25.26, right? So right around here I got filled. We actually did end up bouncing. My first target was about 23 points. So I entered around at 2.6, which is right here, right? Entered on this candle, on this candle, and we bounced all the way to 48 and change. My take profit was 49. Of course, we were like a tick away from the take profit before reversing, right? And for me, I usually give myself one counter trend stab. If the counter trend stab does not work, I do not reevaluate, or I do not enter. I do not enter until I reevaluate when I see the EMAs flip back to the upside. But in this case, we did not, so I did not take any more stabs, right? Kind of unfortunate that, we were a point away from the take profit, when at that point we could have then moved the stop loss to break even and just secured some points. But that's trading, that happens. Why I took it here, right? Because if we look at the daily chart, I took it around 526, which is somewhere around here. At this point in time, we were down about 470 points, 450 points from these highs at the daily 8. And at the same time, the S&Ps were coming into a key level. Obviously, none of it held, right? This is kind of an anomaly day. This was the biggest down day in 2+ years or so. And if you got to take some losses on days like this, so be it, right? You're always going to have to just maintain your same strategy, your same thought process, and just know, doesn't matter what the setup, what your conviction, what anything is, you're going to take losses. It's just about managing the risk and then not going on tilt, right? It's pretty much that simple. But overall, a pretty solid week. We'll see what tomorrow entails, right? This could be the start of a deeper retracement. Obviously, this could just be a capitulation one-day sell, as we've been seeing sometimes. The strength in the RTY personally has me believing that this is just a small rotation, and then we will just kind of let the higher time frame EMAs catch up. But your guess is as good as mine right now. We'll see what happens tomorrow. I'll catch you guys then. Peace.